from a crypto perspective, we came out of the Fed changing policy in 2021 and starting to hike rates aggressively. And so you would think hard assets like crypto and gold would go down, and they did. What accelerated that was all the fraud and bad behavior in the space. And so you had FTX and Celsius and just an embarrassment of bad participants. And so crypto is built on trust, and we lost a lot of trust. And so you had what's a classic market capitulation. Everybody hated it. You couldn't sell enough. Everyone deleveraged. No one's ever going to touch it again. And so when there's complete blood on the streets and markets, it's when you're supposed to come in and buy. It's very scary. You might look like an idiot, but that's when the greatest buying opportunities were. So Bitcoin at 18, 17,000, with hindsight was a great buying opportunity. So what switched? How did we go from all those headwinds to tailwinds? First, the Fed got closer to finishing their rate hike cycle, right? They're hiking. They're not gonna hike forever. And so you could sense and then see the pause, and now we're gonna start the rate cutting cycle. And so that was the macro tailwind. You had a weird combination of good things happen, right? Grayscale, which was this big closed-end fund full of Bitcoin, sued the SEC and said, this is unfair, you won't let an ETF happen. And they won. The reason we have an ETF is not because Gary Gensler decided, I really love crypto now, or the Biden administration, is because they lost in the courts. We have three parts of government, and thank God for the courts in terms of the crypto industry. And so all of a sudden we're gonna get an ETF. Larry Fink, one of the most influential asset managers in history, came out and said, hey, this thing called Bitcoin, I know I used to think it didn't serve a purpose, but it's pretty important. And so the fact that Larry Fink got orange pilled, monstrously important, right? Because it represented institutional investors everywhere. There are lots of different players, but he holds a unique post as the head of the largest asset manager in the world.
Mike Novogratz believes that 2024 and 2025 is going to see a crypto bull run unlike anything we've seen in the past. For those who don't know him, Mike Novogratz is the CEO of Galaxy Digital, and he is a billionaire. Mike believes that the tide has turned and some huge catalysts are playing out in 2024 which will send crypto higher. These catalysts include Larry Fink, the CEO of BlackRock, becoming a Bitcoin advocate, the launch of the Bitcoin ETFs and the passive flows of capital they have unlocked, and finally the US election in just 10 months' time, which will lead to more monetary stimulus as well as crypto regulation. Make sure to stick around to the end of the video when Novogratz breaks down why he believes crypto is inevitable. Also guys, if you want to stay most up to date on the crypto and Bitcoin world, make sure to subscribe to my daily 5-minute crypto newsletter. It gives the latest expert predictions, any breaking news, and top on-chain analysis all in a nutshell. Click the first link in the description to join over 40,000 others in becoming a better crypto investor right now. Now here's Mike Novogratz with his crypto outlook.
And all of a sudden, crypto's always been about a macro story and adoption. You could start sensing, adoption is gonna come. And so people start front running that. We also cleared up Binance, right? The biggest crypto exchange in the world is Binance. There were all this worry, is the money there? CZ settled with the government for some KYC fines, paid a huge fine, and stepped down. And so the risk around Binance, the biggest player, went from here to here, right? So now it's an exchange, it's still the largest exchange, but no one thinks, oh, it's gonna get shut down in a week. No one thinks they don't have the money. It's just an offshore player. And so we took a lot of the tail risks away and put a tailwind together. And now you got a position where, what's left to really get us going? Well, the US still is in a stalemate on regulation, but the optimism is there's 11 months left to an election. And no matter who wins, Democrats or Republicans, Gary Gensler's not gonna be the SEC chair. You are gonna get some legislation. You're gonna get movement. And when I go to DC, there is bipartisan agreement on two pieces of legislation. It's being blocked by Elizabeth Warren and Gary Gensler and a few other players. But that will change. And so when I look at crypto now, when I look at the whole industry, I'm like, we're gonna get regulation in the next 12 to 18 months. We're going to have the Fed cutting rates, and we've got this new vehicle of adoption that is just getting started, right? The ETF is 2 weeks old. Usually ETFs get announced and they don't start trading for 6 to 7 weeks, so they give the sales forces a ton of time to be able to go make their phone calls. In this case, because of the grayscale thing, they had 1 day. And so if you're the Invesco sales force, you haven't even started making your calls, or BlackRock, or now we've got 9 big sales forces, huge sales forces that are selling Bitcoin. And that's a big, big deal. Satoshi Nakamoto, when she wrote her paper, she was really writing it as a response to what she saw, or they saw. I'm going to be really
do you know something we don't know?
I just like to make Satoshi female. It just makes me feel better. That populism was coming, right? The white paper really is the guard of populism. And what we have seen since is the 2 most populist presidents of the last 40 years, right? Donald Trump and then Joe Biden, right? Trump increased government spending a staggering amount before COVID and then blew the doors off. And Biden has just said, hey, my turn now. And so we have normalized spending 25% of GDP on the federal government. I worked at the Office of Management and Budget in 1984, to tell you how old I am. And I was working for the David Stockman administration, the Reagan administration. David Stockman was the head of the OMB. And I learned, hey, this is the rules. The feds get to spend 20% and try to tax 20%. And they usually tax less than 20%. And so our budget deficit is usually because we tax 16 and we spend 20. And that's Republican administration, Democratic administration. The only time we balanced the budget was 1999 with Bill Clinton, because we had those tech receipts. And we got there briefly. Right? But that's the framework we've used. And all of a sudden, Donald Trump, Joe Biden, voila, we're at 25%. Look at next year's budget projection, it's 26%. And we're not even taxing 18. So we have this giant deficit that's being funded. We have a fiscal crisis in this country that is not going away. And when I go to DC, they're doing nothing about it. Like you say, we need a Simpson-Bowles bill. For the guys old enough to remember Simpson-Bowles, it was a balanced budget. How do we get the budget back in check? It's not on the agenda. You know, we went through this period of low rates where it felt like money could grow on trees. And, right, modern monetary theory, Elizabeth Warren, money grows on trees. There are still plenty of people that think this works. And it felt like it did work, right? We had low interest rates and low inflation for a long period of time. What people forget is when you have inflation like we had the last 3 years, the just devastation it does to most people in the country. Forget the people that come to this conference are lucky enough or smart enough to get managers that can kind of navigate around it. But in 2010, the average house in America cost $189,000. 2010 was like a 3-iron away from here. We're now 2024, and the average house costs $400,000.
Wow.
We've doubled the price of the average house in America in like 12 years. That is staggering. So if you're a young kid coming out of college, you're like, shit. Because they didn't double the salaries, right? Goldman didn't go from paying their analyst $140,000 to $280,000, let alone blue collar jobs or normal white collar jobs, right? And so this inflation of assets, the inflation of goods, crushes America, and it's why we have more populism now. It's why Donald Trump still gets 38% of the vote every single poll, because that group of people feel like nothing's working for me, and screw you, people in DC. And so we're in this cycle. I don't know what gets out. When I say Hail Marys at night, the one potential salvation is that AI is just so transformative that it becomes the greatest productivity boost in modern history. And we have such a productivity boost that inflation stays low and we can continue to run these giant deficits because they don't cost anything.
Yeah.
I think that's a very narrow target. I think AI is going to have a big impact, but I think that it could just show up everywhere in time is a low probability. The reality is it was always complicated to buy crypto, to buy Bitcoin, right? You had to set up a wallet, you had to set up a Coinbase account, you had to do something different than you used to do. And it started as a young person's revolution. The bulk of the money in the world and the bulk of the money in the United States is held by the baby boomers. And the baby boomers in general talk to RIAs, registered investment advisors, to manage their money. The ETF is the product designed for registered investment advisors, And so we are now plugging in to this giant group of RIAs. Right? Bitcoin has always been sold, not bought. You had to tell someone the story. They call it orange pilling. I sit down with you and explain why I think it's important, right? And in the long run, the technology of Bitcoin doesn't give it its value. As wildly cool as the breakthroughs were, I could take the Bitcoin blockchain, I could fork it, which just split it in half and call it the Novo chain, and it probably wouldn't be worth that much. Same technology, right? What gives Bitcoin its value is the social construct. I say it has value, you say it has value, therefore it has value. It's the same thing as gold. It's not like gold has inherent value. It's valuable because we have a social construct around it. It's why it drives me crazy when guys like Jamie Dimon or Elizabeth Warren.
I was going to ask, yeah.
Well, you put Jamie Dimon and Elizabeth Warren in the same bucket these days. It's kind of funny. Says, well, I don't think it has value. I'm like, well, I don't care what you think because I got 180 million people that think it has value, including Ray Dalio and Jeff Yass and Pete Brigger and Stan Druckenmiller. And I was like, I'd take their track records over yours, Jamie. And so you don't need the whole world to think it has value. You just need more people and more money to think it has value. And what I see is going to happen is every RIA is going to finally say, hey, you should put 1 or 2%. It's like a stock allocation. And there's a huge pool of capital that hasn't even touched it yet. And so that's what you're going to see coming through the ETFs. And that's that next jolt.
So there's Mike Novogratz. It's clear that the horizon for cryptocurrency looks incredibly promising. Novogratz, with his deep industry insights and bullish outlook, has outlined some compelling catalysts that could redefine the crypto landscape in 2024 and 2025. From Larry Fink's shift in stance towards Bitcoin to the groundbreaking launch of Bitcoin ETFs and the impending US election poised to inject further stimulus and regulation into the market, the stage is set for potentially unprecedented growth in the crypto sector. Remember, the journey in the world of cryptocurrency is dynamic and ever-evolving. Staying informed and ahead of the curve is crucial. That's where my daily 5-minute crypto newsletter plays a pivotal role, offering you the latest expert predictions, breaking news, and top on-chain analysis, all condensed into an easily digestible format. Be part of a community that's 40,000 strong and growing, where like-minded individuals are empowered to make informed investment decisions. If you haven't already, click the first link in the description to subscribe and elevate your crypto investment journey today. Anyway guys, hope you all enjoyed today's video and that provided you with some value. I'll see you all in the next one, and as always, all the best.